welcome again to Sid Caudle. Sid, welcome to the weather of Spain. Everybody's complaining. Whatever we do, we Brits complain about the weather. Oh, it's too hot, it's too cold. Come on. You come on holiday for a fortnight to Spain and you think it's wonderful. You get the same weather in Britain and you're complaining.
Well, I'm not complaining. I had a wonderful day yesterday on Brighton Beach. I spent 3 hours lying on the beach. I can get a train from Hitchin direct to Brighton. It takes 2 hours, but I can sit on the train and do some work and arrive at Brighton, lie on the beach for 3 hours, get a train back, and cost me £32. I had a really nice time.
Yeah,
The only
that's good.
problem is that having got back, my body then decided that it was on holiday. And
Well, I'll wake you up. I'll bring you down to earth. While we're talking about trains, by the way, there's a new one about to start from Euston, right the way up to Stirling, right the way up to Scotland.
Hmm.
You can get apparently a ticket for £29.90. Now, these are Spanish rates that are very cheap and very good trains. And how they've done it is going to be worth waiting for, Sid. They've broken the monopoly because it's a right con, British Rail. On the one hand, you think, well, how can all these companies exist? But there's agreement between them. There's got to be, Sid.
Well, I mean, let's face it, the railways make a big loss. The bulk of railways have never made a profit. But yeah, I mean, what the modern railways do is give discounts if you buy a good time in advance. And I got a discount yesterday by buying in advance for the trip to Brighton. If I'd have just gone to the station and bought a ticket, it'd have been £48. Buying in advance, it was £32. But in the past, when I lived in Sheffield, I used to buy tickets all the time. But you had to buy tickets for specific trains. And if you missed that train, the ticket was invalid.
Mm.
So, it was there were lots stricter conditions, but they're working on the basis that some people will buy tickets and won't travel. So by selling them in advance like that, they're selling a lot more tickets, even though they're cheaper. That's what the railway companies are working on. I don't think it's got anything to do with them ripping off customers, frankly. I mean, because, it's, as I say, I mean, the railways make a big loss. They're heavily subsidized, even now.
Yeah, you wonder about things that I know, for instance, in Southern Europe, there is heavy subsidy, but it seems to work out in the end. Although one has to admit, when you're talking about the ultimate of high-speed trains outside Japan, then the AVE in Spain takes some beating. But it's a beggar to keep on the rails sometimes, and you wonder about health and safety over here.
You're talking about the Japanese bullet train. Yes.
The bullet
Well,
train's fine. The AVE, well, it travels fast, not quite as fast as the bullet. But they don't seem to care about the state of the lines and there's frequent accidents. But that's it. It's part of the culture. Sid, we move on. And Sir Tony has raised his head. And the first time I've heard him with this 6,000 word essay talking sense. What's he doing? I reckon there's something behind this. Is he trying to get cozy with Sir Keir to get friend Andy Burnham out the way?
Well, I think he realizes that the Keir Starmer's numbers up and he's trying to get some influence over whoever replaces him. I think that's what's going on. But it's quite interesting. When Keir Starmer was standing for the leadership, Tony Blair was all behind him. He's a wonderful person, great, will make a great leader of the country, and so on and so forth. Full endorsement. Now, he's that we've actually experienced Keir Starmer. Even Tony Blair, one of his greatest fans, has completely changed his tune. So what's happening? I mean, the reality is that Keir Starmer is proving utterly dishonest and is doing nothing that he promised to do in his manifesto and for what he said he was going to do. And it's quite interesting. Just a couple of days ago, I was listening to Keir Starmer and he was saying, we're on track. Everything's going really well. And today, energy prices are going up. They're going up by 13%. And it's all because of the Iran war. It's all the fault of the Iran war. It's not my fault. It's all the fault of the Iran war. And everything is, suddenly we have a whole spate of bad news just 2 days after he said everything's going really well, everything's on track. I mean, the fact is, this man does not tell the truth. See, if he actually said, I'm doing my best, but we're facing some strong, heavy winds against us, and what I'm going to do in order to, because of the rise in energy prices, I'm going to, reduce VAT or something for a period of time. These are the measures that I'm taking. People would say, oh, well done, good for him. But when you say everything's going fine, everything's going great, when it blatantly isn't, you just say, you can't trust this man. You can't trust anything he says.
Lots of people would agree with that. I'm going to read you some stuff out of Tony Blair's tirade and see what you think about this. He has a go at Sir Keir's inability to do anything with the welfare bill. It's dangerous for the party, and letting Andy Burnham take over. There's a hint. By the end of this decade, we could be spending more on incapacity disability benefits than on defence. No serious country can do that. Goes on to say, watered down many flagship policies. Beware, Angela Rayner. You've got to water down your workers' rights bill. Ed Miliband with your net zero drive. All that will do is damage business. My goodness me. And lastly, don't count on coming out of Europe, either by stealth or direct. It isn't the answer to Britain's immediate problems. Well, for all his failures, Tony Blair's come out with some common sense.
Yes, but it's too late, isn't it? I mean, if he'd been saying these things before the Labour government was elected and he was saying, this is what you need to do, then you would have said, yeah, this guy's talking some sense, talking some real sense. But he's actually talking after the event. So, after we've had, Angela Rayner's bills introduced. And by the way, this week, I've actually seen firsthand what a new Renters' Rights Act means. I mean, I didn't really understand it, and I'm fairly well up, so I can't believe anybody else understood it. But the reality is that for landlords, it is now impossible to remove a tenant from your house unless they're in rent arrears or have done some damage to the property or there's some specific problem that is within the act that you're allowed to remove them for. So Section 21 notices where you could say your tenancy has expired, because my tenancy was, I've only got one rented property, domestically rented property, and there was a 5-year rental period which ran out on the 1st of May. And I went to see her to talk about it and tell her I wanted to put the house on the market. And it's like, I'm not allowed to force her to leave on the face of it. I mean, it just so happens with this tenant, she is actually in rent arrears. So I can literally put a schedule of the rent paid and saying this rent arrears, therefore I'm giving you notice. But even then, under the new law, I now have to give her 4 months notice. It used to be 2 months notice. So even though she's in serious rent arrears, I can't remove her until 25th of September because I gave her the notice on the 25th of May. So it's 25th of September before I can say it's time to go. And even then, if she doesn't go, I've then got to apply to the court and get the court to agree that to give me a possession order. I've then got to apply to send the bailiffs round and all this sort of thing. I mean, I hope it's not going to come to that in my case. But you see, if you couple that with the fact that they're also saying that landlords have got to pay tax on the rent they receive without taking off mortgage payments. So in my case, I'm now getting a rental payment of 2,250 per month. The mortgage is costing me £1,000 per month. So net, I'm actually getting £1,250 per month from the property. But I don't pay tax on 1,250. I pay tax on 2,250. No. You think, what? And it's like, and that, by the way, is interest only. I'm not trying to claim to write off capital payments. I'm only saying the interest, but I'm not allowed to put the interest against the rental payments. So every way now they're getting the landlord. And the result of this is that it's going to be almost impossible for a private person to rent a property.
Yep. Yep.
And the privately rented sector is just going to nosedive. And they've got no idea of this. The Labour Party got no idea that they just think, in fact, I heard Angela Rayner herself say, oh, the poor should have a bigger slice of the cake. The cake, you know. So it's like, we have to protect poor rental people from rogue landlords. Well, of course, yes, if there are rogue landlords, it's fair enough that you have to go through a court process. But they're not just attacking rogue landlords, they're attacking every landlord.
They seem to dislike landlords, they dislike farmers, they dislike anybody in hospitality. This is a strange government, completely without business ethics, good or bad. They don't know what they're doing, Sid. Or do they?
Well, they've got this socialist utopia. In fact, it's quite interesting. I was listening to Andy Burnham today, attacking what Tony Blair was saying. And his response was, Tony Blair's not considering the issue of equality. And what does equality mean? Oh, we've all got to have the same income. Everybody must have the same income. Everybody must have the same wealth. We can't have some people wealthier than others or some people with a higher income than other people. That's equality. And you see, basically, it's communism. And they've tried it. And all that happens, in communist countries, that you just have a different hierarchy. Instead of having the most successful businessmen being the most wealthy people, it's the people highest up in the Communist Party that are the most wealthiest people. And they're the people that rule over everyone, and everyone else is subjugated. But what also happens, has happened in Venezuela, it happened in Cuba, it happened in Russia, you also get massive queues for bread. People can't even buy basic food items because, it's all the same price. Every loaf of bread is the same price. You can't have one loaf of bread that's a higher price than another loaf of bread. So every loaf of bread has to be the same price. So, of course, there's no profit for anybody making bread. So they only have to make bread on the orders of the state. And it all has to be the same bread. We can't have a different types of bread. It's all the same bread, all the same price. And basically, that system does not work. And in Venezuela, it got to a point where they're actually killing cows in the field because the people were starving. And communism does not work. And Andy Burnham, when he says, we've got to have greater equality, it's all about equality. Tony Blair isn't considering the need for equality. What he's actually saying is what Angela Rayner is saying too, is I want to go to a communist system. That's what he's actually saying.
Yeah. And that's before you get to diversity and inclusivity. That kills it off completely. Okay. Another headline, Andy Burnham could trigger a chaotic leadership contest. He could, actually. Let's not hold our breath too long. 3 weeks and we'll know the outcome. There's been one basic, only 750 people approximately on a poll. Who would you vote for? And Andy is about 4 or 5 points ahead of Nigel, or the plucky plumber that Nigel's put in there to stand as a local lad. So what do we say to people like Rupert Lowe? Do we say, let's go into this together, or clear off, let's do a deal?
Well, if we're talking about Rupert Lowe, we're talking about somebody that, in my view, is only interested in himself. I don't think he's genuinely interested in the welfare of the country. And he's got the support of Elon Musk for some reason. I think the main reason is because um, Tommy Robinson hasn't got the support of Nigel Farage. And Nigel Farage made it quite clear he's not supporting Tommy Robinson. And in my view, because of what Tommy Robinson represents, i.e., a violent approach to politics, whatever you say about him personally, and people are saying he's become a Christian and so on and so forth, which I don't deny that for 1 minute. But the truth is, whether you like it or not, he represents a violent approach to politics. And I was on the March for Jesus last Saturday. Powerful event, great event, wonderful worship in the streets of London. And there was somebody standing next to me who said, "Oh, I was here last week at the Unite the Kingdom rally." I said, "But there was a lot of swearing going on." He said, "I really didn't like it. This is way better." So that is the answer to the people who say, "Oh, Unite the Kingdom is Christian. Oh, it's all Christians. There's all people there preaching the gospel." Well, there may be people there preaching the gospel. There's people preach the gospel at gay pride events, but it doesn't mean that you support the gay pride march. And the truth is that, he attracts thugs. That's the reality of it. Now, Elon Musk didn't like it when Nigel Farage said, "No, I don't support Tommy Robinson." I had some people I was speaking to in America, and I said, "I think Nigel Farage is absolutely right. I think he's right not to support Tommy Robinson." And I explained why. Now, Rupert Lowe has jumped on the bandwagon. "Oh, I support Tommy Robinson. Oh, he's a great guy, great guy. Patriot. He's, and Nigel Farage has got the wrong approach." And for some reason, Elon Musk has jumped on Rupert Lowe's bandwagon. Now, this is seriously bad for this by-election we're now talking about, because this by-election in Makerfield, Reform looked likely to win it. In the latest opinion poll, I believe it was 44% Andy Burnham, 41% Reform, and 7% Restore. So Restore being Rupert Lowe's party. So if you put Restore with Reform, they lead by 4%. If you separate the two, Labour lead by 3%. So it looks as though Rupert Lowe is going to hand Makerfield to Andy Burnham and the Labour Party. And I think that is highly, highly regrettable.
Yeah, there's been other people standing up this very day and saying unusual things. Nigel, for instance, suddenly wants a general election now.
Yeah.
And you can understand that, where he's coming from, whether he's got the bullets for the rifle, enough MPs, doesn't matter. He wants that general election now. Has he been cajoled into this?
What Nigel says in that regard is irrelevant, because the only person that can call a general election is Keir Starmer. But if Andy Burnham does win this Makerfield by-election and does force a ladies' leadership election, Keir Starmer has actually told the Labour MPs he may well call a general election. I mean, he said that to frighten them, but I could believe it. I could believe he could do it. Because if he calls a general election, he stays as leader while the election takes place, which will take quite a while to take place. And then presumably after the election, there'll be a new leader will be elected, presuming that he's going to lose the election. But I think it's quite possible Keir Starmer could call an election. There's nobody else that can call it. I mean, Nigel Farage can't call a general election, and it's highly unlikely that there'll be a vote of no confidence in this parliament, because there's over 400 Labour MPs compared with about 250 opposition MPs. So, they've got no chance. I mean, it's not just a matter of 10 MPs switching sides. I mean, you've got to have 100 MPs that switch sides in order to call a general election. That's highly, highly unlikely. And of course, the other factor, of course, is that the Labour Party themselves know full well that if there's a general election now, it's very likely that they would lose their seats. So turkeys don't vote for Christmas, as they say.
Well, yep. The other problem we have, of course, that's been highlighted again this very day is the North Sea, and particular Ed Miliband. He's got to go. So many people are saying this from all sides of politics. And the reason, of course, it's driving investment abroad. the big boys, the big oil companies, the big techie companies that, and we've built up such an amount of credibility with our know-how in drilling in deep sea conditions. It's all going to go to pot. 90% of the big boys have turned round now and said, we've got to know what's going to happen. We're off. It has also been announced today, concurrently to everything else, that the North Sea and associated seas, which we own, are for the long term, not short term. Oh, we're running out of oil. We're getting less. It's not going to be worth it. It jolly well is. It's a massive fine, the North Sea. And Trump knows that and has said that. But our politicians are playing it down on this crusade of net zero. And even Tony Blair said today, it's nonsense.
Yeah, so you see, one of the things which they're not considering, which we've talked about before on this program, is that these windmills only last about 15 to 20 years. So I heard them saying, oh, yes, but if you've got gas-fired power stations, they only last for so long, and then you have to build a new gas-fired power station, and all the cost of rebuilding has to be taken into the equation when you consider the cost of the energy. Well, yes, yeah, absolutely. But you've also got to consider, when you consider the cost of the energy coming from the windmills, how long the windmills are going to last and how soon you've got to replace them. And of course, that isn't added into the equation at all. So, of course, they come up with this, well, before the election, Ed Miliband said, we're going to reduce the energy price by £300 per year for every household. Actually, it's been a lot more than £300 more per year for every household. It's been the complete opposite of what he said. And one of the reasons is simply because windmills don't last. And solar panels don't last that long either. They have to be replaced.
And the grid cannot handle them. It has surges.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to handle. They've not got the attenuation, maybe because science has not been allowed to discover a way of making the grid work properly. Tell you what, Sid, I've seen some enormous quotes. I'm talking about many billions to get the thing anywhere near what it should be.
Yes. And what actually happens is that the grid takes the cheapest energy available. So if there's a surge in energy coming from solar panels or coming from windmills, then basically they won't be taking the energy from the gas-fired power stations, which then may become unprofitable. But then if at another time of year there's very little wind and very little solar, for instance, in January, this can happen, then all of a sudden you're totally reliant on gas-fired and nuclear and so on and so forth. So this is where, you've got to have an energy policy that is broad spread. You can't have a narrow energy policy that is 90% renewables. It just simply does not work.
Okay, interesting about Nicola Sturgeon, isn't it? We've been sort of teasing, tongue in cheek, about the Wicked Witch of the North for 2 years now. Perhaps we know more than the average Joe in the street, but the average Joe in the street sussed out what's happened. And here, and I've got to use the word allegedly before this paragraph, we don't know. It's an unusual marriage that was, but I'm sorry, unless you're going for another Specsavers advert, you can't see a great big camper van parked up the road in the in-laws' garden. You can't see the nice Jaguar. You can't see the lovely jewellery. I'm sure that said husband didn't buy that for himself. Sid, come on.
Yes, well, there's no question that Peter Morrell was a bad penny. And they're now discovering that he was actually involved in theft a long time before he became General Secretary of the SNP. And it is very difficult to believe that his wife never knew that he was stealing anything. I think it's much easier to believe that she turned a blind eye to him stealing stuff. and was like, took no notice, knew full well, but took no notice, looked on the other side, concentrated on other things. Her case is that she never saw the camper van. And I don't know whether she's saying she never saw the Jaguar either. I don't know. But I know she's definitely saying she never saw the camper van. She didn't know it existed. That's her case. And to be fair to her, people have examined her case and cleared her of any wrongdoing. So without proper examination, it's wrong for us to condemn her out of hand. But at the very least, this shows a real lack of attention to detail. And apparently, Nicola Sturgeon was known as somebody who had very good attention to detail.
Mm.
Because, you know, if your wife or my wife was out stealing things and buying expensive stuff, I mean, you would immediately say, "Oh, well, where did you get that? How did you manage to afford that?" And you'd be asking questions and you'd be expressing concern. And the fact that he was General Secretary of the SNP in a very, very important position in the party means that there should be even greater concern, frankly. But you know, it's interesting that this has all come out just after the local elections.
Yes.
You know, it should have all come out before the local elections, and then the SNP probably wouldn't have got back into Holyrood. But because they managed to keep it quiet until after the elections, you know, it's all of a sudden it's like, well, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yes, intrigue carries on. It's not just Peter. Perhaps it's in the name, Peter Mandelson. There you go. Let's move on and talk about asylum seekers and how important they are to governments, not just this one, but other governments. There's been the Boris wave, of course, where it's an easy way to get your economy going, but talk about short-termism. The facts are now coming out. Of course, we want skilled doctors, finance workers, tech employees, etc., and especially care workers. And the easy way is to get them from abroad. But figures are coming out, OBR figures indeed. A person claiming asylum, as an example, after 2 years and having been granted his legal status, only half of them are in work. Now, that's a big hole in this argument. Low-paid workers, important in the care sector, as mentioned. British people are not willing to do it. Well, how about instead of national service, get them in national care home service? Is there any way that we could do that? OBR has said during an immigrant's lifetime, it will cost the country £150,000. These are not free workers saving us money. They're costing us a fortune. These are official figures. Now, fortunately, a lot of them, when they're near retirement, go back to their home country, which is understandable. But Sid, this is a very, very deep problem. And the biggest problem, of course, is an election every 5 years. And we're only concerned about what the next balance sheet says and not what happens 10 years, 15 years in advance.
Yes. You see, I find it very interesting that we've just recently had some figures out which show that net migration is 179,000. And Keir Starmer says this is a tremendous victory. This shows that we're getting to grips. The Labour Party is doing something which the Tories could never do. And under the Tories, net migration was soaring. But what's actually happened is that 800,000 or so people have left the country because of the increase in national insurance and because of the very difficult economic situation in the UK now. And so what we've actually got is some very good businessmen employing lots of people, leaving the country, and we've got large numbers of illegal immigrants arriving. And not all illegal immigrants, some of them legal immigrants as well, arriving and overstaying. And of course, that position is completely unsustainable. And it's not surprising. We see it borne out in the results of debt rising at a time when we've increased tax by 70 billion per year. We've still got debt rising to the tune of 140 billion per year. So if we hadn't had the tax rises, then presumably debt would now be 210. But it probably wouldn't be, because we'd have more people in the country and because business would be prospering. So, but the Labour Party have just got this completely wrong. And the idea that Keir Starmer says, oh, our policies are a tremendous success. I mean, I was talking about this earlier. This is another example where he says our policies are a tremendous success. The reality is they're a total disaster.
I have been looking over the last couple of weeks now, a lot of the pundits talking about our economy. And these are very clever pundits, and they usually get it right. And I tell you what, Sid, I'm astonished at the end of every article, practically. I read after all the doom and gloom, and it's proper doom and gloom, not newspaper headline stuff. There's one sentence: God help us. Now, it's an expletive, but I'll tell you what, maybe it's true if we talk about the proper sense of that phrase.
Well, I mean, basically what they're saying is that these aren't problems that can be easily solved. And absolutely, you feel like saying, God help us, because how can you resolve the situation when you've got a prime minister that keeps lying? I mean, yeah, it's fundamental to Christianity, to the Lord of this country. You shall not bear false witness. You go to court. I swear by Almighty God, I will speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I'm not going to mislead you. And Keir Starmer is the most dishonest prime minister this country has ever had. So absolutely, when you see what's going on, you feel like saying, God help us. Only God can rescue us from this dishonesty.
Yep, okay. Let's move on to the armed forces. 3.2% is the near target of GDP on that. Needs to be 5%. Trump is encouraging that, but it needs to come quickly, Sid. But if you look at what's been happening for 30 years, you can see there's been underinvestment. And nothing's worse than procurement. Maybe it's a vanity project, but if you've got the best fighter in the world, wow, companies come to you. We had one with the vertical landing and takeoff aeroplane, the Harrier, and that was doing very successfully until they decided the Invincible class of aircraft carriers had had its day. Now, they were specially designed for the Harrier short takeoff and landing. So they got rid of them, and they got two aircraft carriers look like the bee's knees, cost billions of pounds, and are utterly useless because A, we can't afford the aircraft for them, and B, they keep going wrong. They're in dock the whole time. And this procurement has been going on for the aforementioned fighter aircraft for a long time. And perhaps it's lack of confidence, I don't know. We want to go in with Germany, with Italy, even with Spain on a joint venture. And nothing has ever come out of a joint venture because, oh, I'll make the wings, I'll make the engine, I'll make the electronics. It's the same largely with the commercial aircraft. You're wasting loads of money while other people are making lots and building planes for the future. By the time any fighter aircraft in Britain is produced, it's last generation. It's out of date, 15 years behind. That's where all the money's wasted.
Yes. And it's very interesting that they actually sent the aircraft carrier to the Middle East. And they said there were only spare parts for half the aircraft on the aircraft carrier. So they literally couldn't fly half the aircraft. I mean, it's just like, what incompetence. I mean, you're watching this and you're saying we're now in wartime because Cyprus is being attacked. And, we need an aircraft carrier there to defend Cyprus. And we're like, half the aircraft carrier don't work because there's not enough planes or not enough spare parts for the planes. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But the other thing that gets me, of course, about procurement, I mean, if people don't know, procurement actually is round about 500 billion per year. So that's all the government contracts for purchasing things that you add up, or for running things. The government put out to the private sector. And every contract has to include social requirements. So you've got to show that you're employing a range of races, a range of sexuality, and then that you're doing sexuality training, and all this sort of stuff is part of a requirement of procurement. And when you're messing around like that, is it surprising if frequently you get the whole thing completely wrong because your focus is in the wrong place? The focus should be purely on running these aircraft carriers efficiently, running services efficiently, getting the equipment we need. That should be the sole focus. All this rest of the stuff is just a disaster.
One cannot forget, even over the pond there in America, Boeing falling foul of the DEI disease when they specifically gave the contract for making the aircraft doors on the 737 to a company that boasts we only have women employees. And of course, the bolts were shattering, doors were flying out of aircraft. That's a prime example of this wretched thing. At least the Donald has stepped on that one and is
Mm.
squashing everything that's DEI.
You're quite right, but we haven't. Quite, in fact, the opposite. Keir Starmer's promoting it, making it worse. So is it surprising if we got problems with our whole procurement system when their focus is on DEI, not on making sure the job's done effectively and efficiently?
Exactly so. Okay, up your street here, Sid, and it's uh, difficult to understand at certain levels, but simple on another. Are we heading for another 2008 banking crash because of shadow banking? Now, let me explain to the viewers that are a bit confused about this. There are the mainstream banks, high street banks, let's call them, and there are the clever banks, whether they be digital, but they are controlled to a certain extent. But if you want money and you can't borrow it at the rates that are available on the ordinary market, then you go to shadow banks that work off finer margins and you take a chance. But if there's a collapse, there's less guarantees and it will have a domino effect. And it is rumoured that things are approaching that. And if we have a serious hiccup, whether it be another pandemic, whether it be another war, it could easily happen.
Okay, I mean, the answer to your question is I really don't know, but if I could just explain to people what actually went wrong in the 2008 financial crisis, was that what happened there was that all the race was on to lend as much money as possible. And you had self-cert mortgages where the companies didn't look at how much you were earning, they just took your word for it. And they were lending like crazy. And the worst thing that I came across, because I was a financial advisor at the time, was Northern Rock, who were selling a together mortgage where you could actually take a mortgage out for 125% of the value of a property on the basis of 90% at one rate and the other 35% on a personal loan basis. And therefore, you did the whole mortgage at the same rate, but you were able to borrow 125% of the value of the house. And the Northern Rock rep that came to me and told me that I should sell these mortgages, I actually said to him, this is immoral. It might be justified if we were at the bottom of the market and we were literally in a situation where it's almost impossible to buy and people need some liquidity. But we're not. We're near the top of the market. And you're coming with me when we're near the top of the market and telling me that I should be selling people mortgages 125% of the value of the property. I said, absolutely no way. So when the financial crisis hit in 2008, and and excuse me, and the first company to go down was Northern Rock, I was like, yeah, I'm not in the slightest bit surprised. And the other thing that was happening, by the way, is that Northern Rock was only financing a quarter of all their loans from savings that people were putting with them. So three-quarters of their loans were coming from the money market. And now, normally speaking, it's more like 50-50. So that's something to address and to look at. If we're going to have another crisis, you've got to address and see what percentage of the money that institutions are loaning comes from savings. You see, because I was speaking to somebody today who's linked with Kingdom Bank, and you see, King is a Christian bank, and Kingdom Bank can only loan from savings. So they can only loan money that's already been saved with them. So that's completely safe. It's a tiny bank, but totally solid. So actually a lot safer than a massive bank that's loaning totally beyond the means.
Interesting. Yes. Right, Sid, we move on to soccer. And I trust you have some information, revelation about the England squad. The World Cup is nigh upon us. Harry Maguire, cracking season. No. Cole Palmer, well, not a cracking season, but better than. And then they've got this fella called Tony. Who's Tony? Well, I'll tell you who he is. He's probably the best penalty taker in the world. Now, is our manager being very clever here?
Well, in my opinion, what's going on is that he's choosing the best characters for the camp. And Cole Palmer has proved himself to be very arrogant at times and not a team player. And I think he's not looking at his ability on the football pitch. He's looking at what effect is he going to have on the group of players. And Ivan Toney, who you just mentioned, is a committed Christian, and it's quite interesting. We've got several committed Christians there that are in the team, which whereas other players you think, oh well, this is a more famous footballer or a better footballer, they're not in the team. And I think personally that is why he's going for people that he believes will gel and make a strong group ethic and really support one another and really fight for each other.
Well,
You didn't expect me to say that, did you?
I expect everything from you, Sid. We move on. Spygate, Southampton Spygate, the young apprentice. I mean, it sounds like a comedy, doesn't it?
Well, apparently, this actually happened a few years back, and there was no law against it. And the FA actually introduced a code to say that any spying on opposing teams within as a period of time, I think it's within a month or something of you playing them, it's is strictly forbidden. So I think Southampton knew that what they were doing was wrong and forbidden by the FA code. And since the FA's brought that code in and made it clear to all clubs this is the rule, and Southampton breached the rule very clearly and undoubtedly deliberately. I mean, if this was an accident and it was like a mistake, no, I'm sorry, it was done deliberately. And Southampton admitted it. And they admitted that, yes, we've done it. Yeah, we hold up our hands. We shouldn't have done it. I think they got the punishment they deserve. Whether they should lose 4 points from the start of next season, I question that because, frankly, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's good for the morale of the team, of the fans. You got to start next season -4. No, I'm sorry. they're right to remove them from the playoffs, absolutely right. But I don't think they're right to remove 4 points. Maybe a fine as well, but that's my opinion.
£200 million? That's a heck of a fine, isn't it? That's
It
what's
is.
going to cost Southampton. Bit heavy.
Well, when you think of also what they've lost by not being in the playoffs, I mean, if they'd have won the playoff final, which is a good chance they would have done, because Middlesbrough, they beat Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough only just lost to Hull, so there's a good chance they would have done. That would have been another 100 million. I reckon that is worth. So 200 million is definitely far too much. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, finally, did we talk about the World Cup again? $1,000 a night for lodgings, mega prices to get in there if you can get a ticket. I tell you what, it's not taking off like other competitions have done in the past. They've overpriced themselves.
I think they've got the problem that Donald Trump has spoken out and said it's overpriced and he wouldn't pay the price. So it's like that being a situation that's been well publicized. You're in a situation where a lot of people that maybe would have bought the tickets are now saying, I'm going to wait and see whether they reduce them because Donald Trump is saying they should be reduced. Well, I think they will be reduced if people don't buy them. And they'll probably find that, late in the day, they've got lots of discount tickets and all of a sudden the stadiums are full because I think it's going to be a very, very exciting World Cup. But
Yeah,
yes, they certainly overpriced it initially, definitely.
yeah. And maybe the airlines that'll ship them out last minute to get their cheap ticket will give them an expensive ticket to make up. So we're back to square one.
Maybe.
Well done, Sid. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Okay, cheers.